All right, hi everyone. This is the editorial of an official round, an official div for round two. This was prepared by Essence and Slavic G. So this is basically this is not a rated round. This is not by code forces. These are just two people who made a round, and it was really nice. So if you are Cyan or below, I really recommend you to virtually solve this contest. I'll be putting the link in the description, and it was a really nice round. It was tested by some really great coders like Eric To, Mongo, and Galen Collin, and few others. So if you've already attempted that round, and if you're wondering what the solutions are, let me just go through them one by one. So there were six questions in total, and all of them were easy. I mean, if you are Cyan or below, you should be able to solve a lot of them. And if you're above that, you should be probably able to solve all of them. But anyway, so the first question was about catching the imposter. It's based on the Among Us game, one of my favorite games. So here we have n players, and they are numbered from 1 to n, and one of them is a hidden imposter. Now we have a list of people whom we've seen doing a task. So like these people cannot be the imposter, and we want to uniquely determine who the imposter is. So we have to answer yes or no, depending upon whether we can uniquely determine it or not. So this is kind of easy. What we have to see is just like there are total n players, and if we can like unique, if we can, if we have seen n minus one people do a task, that means the last person is definitely an imposter. So what we want here is like we have n players and we have the size of list k. So like out of these k elements, at least like exactly n minus one should be distinct. So if there are n minus one distinct elements in these k elements, then the answer is yes. Otherwise, it is no. So even in the samples, you can see that this is following. Now I'll show my code. So basically, that's what I did. I took a set and um, I inserted all the elements in the set, and then I checked whether there are n minus one elements in the set. So since a set only gives distinct value, this solution got accepted. Okay, now let's move on to the problem B. In the problem B, it's the rabbit game, and there's a farmer named John. He has two rabbits, and they keep eating bigger and bigger carrots. So if I talk about the average statement, what's happening here is there is an array, and a rabbit starts from both of the ends. Like one rabbit starts from the left end and the other rabbit starts from the right end. Okay, and then they keep moving forward, and they keep eating carrots one by one, and they eat the carrot if and only if the next carrot is like the size of the next carrot is at least equal to the size of the carrot that they just ate. So what we want is like here the first rabbit will eat a carrot of size 1, then it will eat a carrot of size 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. But like here first it will eat 1, then it will eat 3. But now since 2 is smaller than 3, it won't eat this and it will stop here. So that's what's happening from both of the sides. So this is actually kind of a naive implementation question. You can just uh, you can just start a loop from the left end, and obviously the rabbit will eat the first carrot, and while the next carrot is greater, like the size of the next carrot is greater or equal to the previous one, you can keep adding it to the answer. After that, you can start a loop from the right end, or maybe you can just reverse the array and then do this same thing again. That's what I did. I first calculated from the left end, then I reversed the array, and then again calculated it from the left end, and got the answer. Now, one special case is um, let's say, for example, all the elements are equal, then both rabbits will eat all of the carrots. But this is not possible because there are only n carrots, so the answer cannot be greater than n. So if the answer that you calculated, if that's greater than n, you just change it and make it equal to n. So that's what I did. Exactly that's what I did, and I'm going to show my code. So yeah, I took n as input, then I took the array. Okay, now I took the answer equal to 1 because the rabbit will obviously eat the first carrot. After that, like while the current carrot is greater or equal to the previous one, I'm adding 1 to the answer. Then I reverse the array and then I do the same thing again. And if the answer is greater than n, I make it equal to n and print the answer. So this was the second problem. Now I'm on the third problem, and this was really interesting. It's a standard observation question. Like it's a very standard thing. If you know it, it's very easy for you. But if you don't know it, it might be a little tough to come up with it. And if you do come up with it, that's a really nice thing. So I'll be explaining this one in a little more detail than the previous two, and maybe even in a little more detail than the next one. So anyway, Kevin has an array consisting of n integers and he wants to make another array and for the array b and a he will define this value and he wants this value to be as minimum as possible. So this is basically like both arrays have n elements and this is the difference of absolute values of the difference between the corresponding elements and um, uh, George wants this value to be minimum. Now there's one restriction that all elements of the array B are same. Okay, so now this is one thing I would like to advise to the problem setters too. Like they didn't need to complicate the statement with another array. They could have just asked the participant to choose an integer x, and they could have just written that they want to minimize the value of ai minus x because like there's no point of having an array if all the values are the same. So anyway, so that's the question. We want a single integer x such that this value is as small as possible. So if you know the standard observation, it's always the median. The median is the best choice for this element. Now I'm going to show why median is the best choice. So yeah, so let's say we have a lot of elements. Like let's say I have a number line, okay, and these dots are the elements. Now I want one element somewhere such that the difference between such that the absolute difference between the distances from this line to these points, I want the sum of all these differences to be minimum. So let's see how this sum changes as this line moves from left to right. So when this line is to the farmost left, then all of these distances are added. Okay, and like when I will move it 1 unit to the right, what will happen is from all of these values, one will be subtracted. Uh, but but here in this value, one will be added. So this will keep happening till I reach here. So like from this point to this point, when I kept on moving from left to right, at each step, one was getting added to the answer due to this point, and 4 was getting subtracted from the answer due to all of these. Now, when I move further right, what will happen is 2 will keep on getting added and 3 will keep on getting subtracted. And finally, uh, when I reach here, now if I move to the right, then 3 will get added to the answer and 2 will get subtracted. And if I move to the left, then 3 will get added because of these and 2 will get subtracted because of these. So that's why we can intuitively see why median is always the best, because when we're at the median, then equal number of points are on the left and on the right, and if we move the line to the left or the right, then the contribution of the distances of these points, the value that increases here, that will increase, that will decrease here, and this point will be on the wrong side at all times. So that's why median is the best. Now this was when the number of points are odd. Let's see what will happen if the number of points are even. So if the number of points are even, then actually, like if you notice by yourself in the way that I explained for the odd case, if you notice it yourself, I'll leave this as an exercise for the viewer. You can see that all of these lines, like in between these 2 points, all of these lines, for all of these lines, the answer is exactly the same and it does not change. So what we can do is we can pick any of these points between these 2 points, or we can just pick one of these 2 points. So I'll just call it the median, and that's what we had to do in this question. We had to pick the median, and we had to add the deviation from the median of each point and add it to the answer. Like I'll show you what I did in the code. So I took the array as an input, then I sorted the array. After sorting it, I took the median element. Okay, so n by 2 is always the median, whether n is even or odd. I mean, if n is even, then it's not the median. But as I said, like you can pick any point between the two middle points. So it's one of those. Then I added the deviation from m to all of the points and printed the answer. So this was like this was a good question, but it was standard. I mean, uh, if you didn't know about it, then it was a really good question. Okay, so now we're at problem D. It's Sanda's job. Okay, this was pretty trivial, but here it's all about implementation. You need to know a few things about how the programming languages work, whichever programming language you're using. Anyway, so like there is a way to do it without any inbuilt functions, but it's easier to keep functions like toString or something like that handy. Uh, I know some people who weren't able to do this in C++ because they forgot how to convert it into string, so they use Python instead. You can do similar things, but anyway. So okay, so I'll just talk about the average statement. Like you have a number A, and you can rearrange it to form another number B, and you want A plus B equal to S, and as an input you are given A and S. Now you want to see if it is possible to come up with a B such that B is a rearrangement of A, and A plus B is equal to S. So this is not very tough, this is easy. The thing we notice here is okay, so A plus B equals S, so we can just transpose A there, and B equals S minus A. So we want S minus A and A to have the exact same digits. So to do this, you can do it without any inbuilt functions. You can just check all of the digits and see if they are equal or not. And but it will be easier if you convert both A and S minus A into strings. And once you converted them into strings, you can check if the characters in both the strings are equal. And the best way to do is you sort both strings and check if they are equal or not. So that's what you will do. Like calculate B equal to S minus A, then convert A and S minus A both into strings, and sort both the strings and check if they are equal. So if they're equal, then the answer is yes. Otherwise, the answer is okay. Now we're at problem E. In problem E, we have a string S of length n. N is 2 into 10 to the power 5 as the standard limit. Then you have another string T. T has only two lowercase Latin characters, and S also had lowercase Latin characters. So anyway, your task is to count the number of pairs such that the number of pairs LR such that the substring defined by these two numbers, in SL to SR, this substring contains T. So you want to find all of the pairs LR such that SL to SR, this substring contains at least one occurrence of T. So let's see what we can do here. So we had a string something like this. Like we had a string like this, and we had different characters here. Now what can happen is two of these characters can be equal to t. Now when these are equal to t, let's say these two characters are equal to t, let's try to see in which strings uh, like of for which pairs LR this will be present within this pair of LR. We want to see, like for example, if I put L here and R here, then this string will be present in this LR. So this will be included in the answer. Similarly, if we put R here, then also it will be included. If we put R here, then also it will be. So let's try to count exactly how many times it will be included. So the L pointer can be anywhere between here to the starting, like from the starting till this point, the L pointer can be anywhere. And the R pointer can be like anywhere between this point and till the end. So for all of these, like these are, let's say this index is I. So these are I plus 1 into, I think this is n minus 1 minus I. These are n minus 1 minus I, and these are I plus 1. Okay. Yeah. So if you multiply these two, you'll get the number of pairs in which the number of substrings in which this is present. Okay. So for one substring we've done this, but let's say there are more than one such substring. Let's say there's another match somewhere here. Okay. Now if you try to do the same thing, like placing R here and placing L anywhere, there will be one problem. You might place L here, and then the problem will be that if you try to include this string, you've already included this string when you were at this pair, right? So at that time you had already included this string, so like you cannot do it twice, then otherwise it will be overcounting. So you have to avoid that, and to avoid that, what you can make sure is like when you find this one, you can put the R pointer anywhere from this point till the end. You can put the R pointer anywhere, but you cannot put the L pointer beyond this point. Like you cannot put it here or anywhere before this. In fact, like you cannot put it anywhere before this. So from this till the end, you can put it. So to make sure you do something like this, you need to keep the point where you found the string t for the last time. So for this purpose, I took a variable named last, which stored the index of the point where I found the string for the last time. So let me just show you a glimpse of my code. Mm, yes, so I took s and t as input. Then I initialized last with -1. I initialized it with -1 because like it helps even when there are like it's fine to say that the last occurrence was -1 because uh, we start with 0, so we can say that okay, like just before 0 there was an occurrence of the string t. So but anyway, like whenever I find t in I and I plus 1, what I do is I add to the answer uh, I minus last into n minus 1 minus I, and then I change last. So one problem here could be like it could cause overflow of integer. So you might have to take the inputs as long, and you might have to calculate the answer as long. So yes, I've done this in my code. Uh, like this might be one of the reasons why your code is failing on this problem, because you have to make sure in long. I think they gave this hint in the problem as well, that the answer won't fit in the 32-bit integer. Yeah. So yeah, so just have to make sure about that. You take long instead of int, and if you're using some other language, use the 64-bit integer of that language. Anyway, so where's the last problem now? And this was a really interesting game theory problem, and I would have loved to see this problem as a division 2B or C in some contest, at least, or like a division 3C in some official contest. I think it was a really nice really nice problem. So anyway, there are Alice and Bob, and they are playing a game on the n cross n grid. It's made of square cells. Okay, in one move, Alice can choose a 2 cross 2 empty square and then paint all of the four cells red. Okay, and all of the four should be empty before Alice chooses it. Okay, like none of those can be colored. Okay. So if no available 2 cross 2 square is there, then Alice will pass and Bob will still keep on making his move. Now in Bob's move, he can paint only one empty blue cell. Okay, so he can take any empty blue cell and he can paint it. So they will move alternatively, and they will move alternately, and Alice goes first. So we have to find out who will win. So like the main observation in this question was, you'll have to think for a little bit of time, and then what you will observe is, at first look it seems like Alice has some kind of advantage that it can cover bigger squares. Like in a single move, Alice can cover four squares, whereas like Bob can cover only one square, and Alice can cover four squares. So it looks like Alice is at a big advantage, but that's not true. And let's see why it's not true. So um, whenever whenever Bob puts his marker anywhere, what happens is that, let's say he puts his marker here, then all of these four cells get wasted. Like Alice cannot put like uh, Alice cannot use all four of these, right? I mean, Alice can put it like this, but then this will get wasted. Like anyway, like whenever Bob puts his um, moreover, like Bob can do super optimal moves. Like let's say Alice puts it here. So Bob can put his marker here, and then what will happen is all of these three cells get wasted, and Alice can never put his marker here. So Alice will put somewhere else. Then whenever Alice does her move, Bob can just waste four cells. Like he will paint one cell and then waste the rest of the three. So this way, effectively, Bob is also doing 2 cross 2 moves, because like when Alice cannot move anymore, then Bob will paint all of these again. So effectively, Bob can also move 2 cross 2, and Alice can also move 2 cross 2. So it's the same. Like Alice has no special advantage there. The only advantage Alice has is that Alice is moving first. So like if n was equal to 2, then Alice would have definitely won. Like she will put just one marker and win the game. And there are some other cases also where Alice would win, but we will see to them later. Now let's see what is the advantage of Bob here. So the main advantage of Bob here is that if n is odd, then Bob will necessarily win, because like if n is odd, let's say n is 3. So yes, Alice will put a 2 cross 2 marker, but like the odd values that will be left, they can only be covered by Bob. So Bob will always win if n is odd. Um, because another thing is that even if the grid is very big, so all of Alice's move can be counted by Bob, because Alice can also do that. Alice can also Alice can do 2 cross 2 moves, so Bob can also do 2 cross 2 moves. So like he will cancel all of the moves. Now let's see when Alice can win. So Alice can win only when n is even, right? If n is odd, then there is no chance of Alice winning. So if n is even, then like we can consider 2 cross 2 blocks as 1 cross 1 blocks, because both Alice and Bob are doing 2 cross 2 moves, right? So what you can do is you can just divide n by 2. Like if they were 6, like uh, if n was equal to 6, you can say n is equal to 3, like new n is equal to 3, because both Alice and Bob are doing 2 cross 2 moves. And then now you have to see who will win in this. So like in this particular example, Alice will win because Alice moves first. So what will happen is, obviously, since since n by 2 is odd, that's why Alice will win this, because like um, since n by 2 is odd, n by 2 is 3, yeah? And since it's odd, and Alice started moving first, like Alice will put more markers than Bob. So this is the whole analysis. And if n by 2 is even, then it will be a draw. So these are the things that you have to keep in mind. Like if n is odd, then definitely Bob will win. If n by 2 is odd, then Alice will win, and otherwise it's a draw. So that's what we have to do in this question. Um, I think that's exactly what I did. Yeah, so if n is odd, then Bob will win. And if n is divisible by 4, that means n by 2 is also even, then it's a draw, otherwise Alice will win. So, yes, that wraps it up. And that was the editorial for the unofficial Division 4 round. And as I've heard from Essence and Slavic G, they will be doing another such round later. And I hope they will help me with making such an official round for myself too. I'm thinking about making an official Div 3 round. I have a few problems in my mind. I hope you guys will like it. So I will be making it by January or December, I hope. Depends on how long it takes. And if you like my channel, leave a subscribe. And thank you for watching.